Act 1. The Awakening. The rhythmic clack-clack of rattan sticks was the only sound in the humid afternoon air of the Bahagari dojo. Bexy Kamaliga moved with a dancer's grace and a warrior's intent, her strikes a blur against her sparring partner's defenses. "Too slow, Delgado?" she taunted, a grin spreading across her face. Isaiah, calm and focused, barely flinched. He deflected her flurry with a circular motion of his own sticks, the classic Siniwali flow of Arnis. "You're telegraphing your abanico, Kamaliga. Your excitement is your tell." From the sidelines, Cassie Santos watched, her fingers flying over her phone screen almost as fast as her friend's sticks were moving. "She's not wrong, Isaiah. My app calculates your reaction time dropped by 0.2 seconds that last round, probably thinking about Pansit Canton again." The session broke into laughter, the three friends collapsing onto the polished bamboo floor just as Cassie's phone buzzed with a news alert. Her smile vanished. "Guys, listen to this. Another one. In Paco. Victim found with unexplained lacerations, pronounced dead at the scene from apparent blood loss. That's the third this week." A shadow passed over the dojo. The playful energy dissipated, replaced by a grim unease. Strange attacks were becoming a chilling norm in Manila. The weekend trip to Siquijor with Cassie's Auntie Lena, an archaeologist, was supposed to be a distraction. The island was lush, beautiful, and shrouded in legends of magic and healers. For Bexy, it was a welcome escape from the creeping dread of the city's headlines. While Auntie Lena directed her team at a dig site, Cassie was busy with a drone, mapping the terrain. "Foliation is too thick over there," she muttered, "but the thermal scan is picking up a cool anomaly. Could be a cave entrance." They found it hidden behind a curtain of vines, a narrow fissure in the limestone rock, exhaling air that was 10 degrees cooler. Isaiah hung back, a wary look on his face. "My Lola would say places like this are not for us to disturb." But Bexy felt a pull, an inexplicable magnetism. "We'll just take a quick look." Inside, the cave was a cathedral of stone and silence. Sunlight speared through a crack in the ceiling, illuminating a small, moss-covered altar. And there, resting on a bed of stone as if placed yesterday, was a medallion. It was intricately carved from what looked like dark bone or ancient ivory, depicting a swirling pattern that seemed to shift in the low light. At its center was a single milky stone that pulsed with a soft, internal light. "Whoa!" Bexy breathed, reaching for it. "Bex, don't!" Cassie warned, but her curiosity was overpowering. The moment Bexy's fingers closed around the anting, the world dissolved. Visions. A circle of Babylons chanting under a blood-red moon. 7 medallions glowing with immense power, sealing a screaming, shapeless darkness into the earth. A great seal cracking. Then, a face. Horrifying and handsome all at once, with eyes of liquid night and a smile full of needle-sharp teeth. "Malakas." Bexy gasped, stumbling back. The medallion was searing hot, branding her palm. She cried out, but when she tried to drop it, it was fused to her skin, the pain subsiding to a warm, throbbing hum. The carved patterns now seemed etched into her very flesh. That night, the nightmares came. She woke in their small hotel room to the sound of scratching at the window. A large, bat-like shape obscured the moon. Then the door handle began to jiggle. "Cassie," she whispered, shaking her friend awake. Isaiah was already up in the adjacent bed, grabbing a heavy flashlight like an Arnis club. The door splintered open. The creature that entered was gaunt and unnaturally tall, its limbs bending the wrong way, its mouth a distended gash lined with fangs. An Aswang. It sniffed the air, its head cocking toward Bexy. Fear turned her blood to ice, but as the creature lunged, the fear was incinerated by a sudden blazing heat from her palm. A golden light erupted from the medallion, washing over her body. It was pain and ecstasy. Strength she never knew existed flooded her muscles. The world sharpened into hyper-clarity. She could see the dust motes dancing in the air, hear the frantic beating of Cassie's heart, and smell the grave dirt stench of the monster. She moved without thinking. As the Aswang swiped at her, she dropped into a yaoyan crouch, the claw passing inches over her head. She came up inside its guard, her fist, enhanced by a power that was not her own, connecting with its chest. The sound was like a thunderclap. The creature screeched, flying back into the hallway. Bexy stood panting, her body glowing with a soft, golden aura. She looked at her friends, their faces a mixture of terror and awe. She was no longer just Bexy, the high school martial artist. She was a Magco. Act 2. The hunt begins. Back in Manila, their lives became a double helix of normalcy and secret war. In class, Bexy was just a student. But after school, they gathered in Isaiah's grandmother's sari-sari store, which smelled of herbs and ancient secrets. Lola Remedios, a retired babalan, examined Bexy's palm, her wrinkled fingers tracing the symbol. "The stories are true," she whispered, her voice full of reverence and fear. "The 7 talismans of the babalan. You have awoken one child, and in doing so you have awoken the ancient evil it was meant to contain. Malacca stirs. His Aswan clans gather." Cassie became their archivist. Between homework assignments, she cross-referenced Lola's stories with digital maps, police reports, and historical records of supernatural sightings. The legends say the talismans were hidden in places of great power. If Malachus has 3, he's going for a 4th. My algorithm suggests Mount Makiling. The energy readings there are spiking. The forest of Mount Makiling was a world away from Manila. It was ancient, silent, and watchful. They hadn't gone far when the path behind them seemed to vanish. The air grew cold. "We're being led astray," Isaiah said, his voice low. "A Tikbalang's trick." They emerged into a clearing to find him waiting. A prince of the Dalaketnan, once beautiful, now corrupted. His lower body was that of a powerful black stallion, his torso muscular and human, but his eyes glowed with the same dark fire Bexy had seen in her vision. Around him stood a dozen more Tikbalang, their hooves pawing the earth. "The Magco," the prince hissed. "The usurper. The medallion does not belong to you. Give it to me and your deaths will be swift." "We don't have it!" Cassie yelled, trying to reason. But the creatures charged. The fight was chaos. Bexy's enhanced speed and strength were a match for their power, but there were too many. Cassie used her knowledge of Bastakan, staying low, sweeping the legs of the creatures, using their own height and weight against them. Isaiah fought with the precise, economical movements of Arnis, his flashlight and a sturdy branch serving as his sticks, deflecting strikes and landing sharp, stunning blows to joints. It was Bexy, however, who ended it. Channeling the medallion's power, she unleashed a wave of pure light that threw the Dalaketnan prince back, his form shimmering and shrinking until he fled into the woods, his followers scattering. As they caught their breath, the forest itself seemed to sigh. From behind trees and under ferns, tiny iridescent lights emerged. Lambana, winged fairies with wise old eyes. One, slightly larger, alighted on a branch near Bexy. "You fight well, Magco," she chimed, her voice like wind chimes. "But you fight a tide. Malacca's the bloodthirsty grows stronger with each talisman he claims. He seeks to complete the circle at the Banawe terraces during the new moon, to unmake the seal and cloak this world in his shadow. You must find the others first, or all is lost." The training that followed was intense. In the dojo, they blended their styles. Bexy learned to channel her power through her martial arts, her yayan kicks leaving trails of light. Cassie, the strategist, built gadgets. Arnis sticks tipped with blessed silver, drones that could disperse Lola's protective salt mixtures. Isaiah learned to inscribe ancient symbols on their gear, his grandmother teaching him prayers of protection and healing. They were no longer just friends. They were a unit, a weapon. Act 3, the Shadow War. The race was on. They dove into the underwater caves of Palawan, fighting off serpentine Bakunawa to retrieve a medallion hidden in a coral altar. They scaled the treacherous, ash-strewn slopes of Mayon volcano, evading a hostile capre to find a talisman within a plume of mystic gas. With each victory, Bexy grew stronger, her connection to the medallion deepening. But so did the fear. Malachus was always one step ahead, his influence spreading like a stain. Their trusted circle was small. Lola Remedios, Auntie Lena, and Officer Rivera, a family friend in the Manila PD who had quietly been helping them cover up the supernatural incidents. It was Officer Rivera who gave them the tip. The last medallion. Our historical text suggests it's in the archives of Fort Santiago. I can get you in after hours. It was a trap. The moment they stepped into the silent stone fortress, the gate slammed shut. Malacus's laughter echoed off the walls. Officer Rivera's face twisted, his form shimmering to reveal the beautiful, monstrous face from Bexy's vision. Children are so trusting, Malacus purred. Aswang guards descended from the shadows. It was a brutal ambush. They were overwhelmed. As Malacus moved to claim the final fake medallion from Bexy, Isaiah let out a fierce cry, tackling the ancient Aswang to give his friends a chance to escape. Malacus backhanded him with impossible force, and Isaiah fell, a deep, dark gash across his chest, his body terrifyingly still. Bexy screamed, her power flaring in a blinding wave of grief and rage that forced Malacus back, just long enough for her and Cassie to drag Isaiah's limp form to safety. The new moon was rising over the majestic Banawe rice terraces, but tonight the ancient steps were thrumming with dark energy. At the center of the main terrace, Malacus stood, the 6 corrupted medallions floating around him, pulsing with a vile purple light. Isaiah's sacrifice had only delayed him. He had used his dark magic to locate the true final medallion himself. Bexy and Cassie arrived, Isaiah's protective sigils painted on their skin, their blessed weapons in hand. He was weaker, propped up by Cassie's tech-aided braces and sheer will, but he was there. They were together. "The little Magco returns," Malacus sneered, "to watch the world end." "We're here to give you a receipt," Bexy shot back, falling into her fighting stance. The final battle was epic. Cassie and Isaiah fought a defensive battle against a horde of lesser Aswang, using terrain, tactics, and Isaiah's rituals to hold the line. Bexy faced Malacus. It was a whirlwind of light and darkness. He matched her speed, her strength. He was a shapeshifter, a master of fear and illusion. But he was not a master of Arnis, of Yaoyan, of the disciplined human spirit that fueled her every move. She fought not just with power, but with skill. She used a Redonda strike to disrupt his morphing arm. A Yaoyan spinning kick broke his concentration. She was winning, but as she prepared her final strike, she saw it. The 6 medallions plus her own were aligning. Malacus had planned this. Her power, used in combat against him, was completing the ritual. The seal was breaking. The ground began to crack, a deep, endless darkness welling up from below. "You see?" Malacus laughed. "Your power fuels my triumph." Lola Remedios's words echoed in her mind. The power is not to be taken, but to be given. Bexy understood. The ultimate power of the Magco was not to destroy, but to sacrifice. She dropped her stance. She looked at her friends, her brave, brilliant, loyal friends, and smiled. Then she turned to Malacus, not with hatred, but with pity. "You lose," she said. She placed her palm, the medallion burning bright over her heart. She didn't attack Malacus. She focused all of the power, every last ounce of the ancient magic, inward. "I offer myself to mend the seal," she whispered, the words coming from a place deep within her soul. "My power for their peace." A golden light, pure and blinding, exploded from her chest. It shot towards the 7 medallions. Instead of corrupting them further, it overloaded them. The vile purple light was consumed by the brilliant gold. One by one, with the sound of 1,000,000 shattering crystals, the medallions dissolved into sparks of light and vanished. Malacus screamed, his form unraveling, pulled into the closing fissure in the earth. "No!" The darkness swallowed him, and the seal snapped shut, leaving the terraces silent and whole. The light faded from Bexy's body. She collapsed to her knees. The familiar hum of power in her palm was gone. The etched symbol was now just a faint, ordinary scar. She was just Bexy again. Climax and resolution. They stood together on the terrace, watching the first rays of the sun paint the sky. The darkness was gone. Manila, the Philippines, the world, was safe. "Your power," Cassie said softly, putting an arm around her friend. "It was never mine to keep," Bexy replied, her voice tired but clear. "It was mine to give back." Isaiah placed a hand on her shoulder. "Lola will be proud. That was the wisdom of a true Babalan." They walked away from Banawe, bruised and tired, but victorious. Bexy Kamaliga was no longer a magical warrior. The supernatural world had gone quiet, back into the myths and stories. But in a small dojo in Manila, 3 friends still sparred. Bexy's kicks were still lightning fast, her strikes precise. Cassie's strategies were sharper than ever. Isaiah's movements were filled with a new, hard-won grace. They had lost the magic, but they had retained everything it had taught them: courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable strength of their bond. They were ready for anything. Not because of a medallion, but because of each other. They were warriors, forged in the heart of Filipino legend, and their story was far from over.